So thanks for accepting our invitation.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so I'll ask you to start by introducing yourselves. Please, Mario.
Thank you, Anastasia, for the introduction. I'm Mario Parteli, and I'm founder and CEO of Abiby. Abiby is an Italian platform to launch new brands and new products into the e-commerce space. We're present in Italy and in Spain. We're a startup, and now we are present both in Italy and in Spain. And well, I'm really passionate about digital, so thank you for having me today, and really happy to join the conversation.
Now, Ashley, please.
Thank you so much for having us on such a great panel. My name is Ashley Watton. I head up the marketing and communications here at Foreo in the UK. So Foreo is a specialist in skin devices. So as you can imagine, during the situation which we've been through, we've seen some tremendous growth. We're sort of passionate. Foreo is really passionate about improving the well-being of its consumer through its devices. So we like to think of us as a beauty disruptor. So we look at different channels, we look at different platforms, and we really go where our consumers are going to create that deep and meaningful connection to them as well. So I'm sure you'll sort of see we're really passionate in terms of digital. We've got a number of accolades, awards behind us. We utilize a lot of different media in order to talk to our consumers as well. So yeah, it's a really interesting brand being at the forefront of, I suppose, beauty technology really, and sort of pushing the boundaries beyond that as well, and seeing, I suppose, what does the future hold for devices? What does the future hold for our consumer in terms of how their attitudes and perceptions to beauty devices, and getting them to incorporate those devices, I suppose, into their, what we see is now wellness rituals, which is super interesting. So yeah, I'm so excited for this discussion. And Andrea, thank you also for such an elegant sort of speech you did, some really interesting points you raised in your previous section.
Great. Thank you, Ashley.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I was on mute. I'm sorry.
Classic.
Okay, so Andrea, if you want to introduce yourself super briefly, thank you.
Yes, so for everybody who's just joined, hi, I'm Andrea Sasso. I'm the Director of Business Development for Skinlabo. And Skinlabo is the first Italian digital native vertical brand in skincare. And so I love what Ashley just said about being data focused, and we are so serious about our product. Our product manager, I call her the elimination manager sometimes, because she's so strict about what gets into our products and what doesn't, and to make sure that really we have just the right amount of every active ingredient. But as much as we are a product company, we are a performance marketing company. And being digital native, that's all about how we acquire customers and how we're retaining customers. And so I think it's a super exciting space to be right now. The beauty industry is growing, but most importantly, the digital part, the e-commerce part of beauty is sustaining all the growth. So nice job on inviting us beauty people to your fashion week here. And yeah, I'm really excited about this panel. Amazing counterparts. We got the chance to meet already last week, and I think we had scheduled to meet for half an hour, but like we could have gone on for hours and hours. So we'll try to keep it brief for you today.
Okay, thank you. So I would start this conversation by asking you, how has the consumer's attitude towards beauty changed post-pandemic? Who wants to start?
Shall I start then? I'll let me take it away. So really interesting question, and really, I think the pandemic has really accelerated, certainly, I think, some key trends that we in the market here in the UK have begun to see previously. But I think the pandemic has really accelerated the adoption of technology. So here at Foreo, we, as you can imagine, beauty devices were sort of gaining momentum in the market, but still we were facing some challenges, both from our consumers and both from our sort of our PR and editors as well. And I think what the pandemic done was just fast forwarded our brand probably 2 years in terms of that. So the adoption, consumers were unable to go to their spas, unable to have that me time that they craved. So they looked for other solutions in order to do that. And it was so interesting to see how consumers really pivoted to this digital content space as well. And I'm sure Mario can talk through what that looked like from his perspective. But certainly from ours, we saw, again, we were creating virtual consultations, which if you ask me at the beginning of January, is that on my roadmap in terms of the brand? I would say absolutely not. We are a physical brand. We want to have that deep and meaningful connection to that consumer in a bricks and mortar space versus a digital sort of consultation. But again, the pandemic, obviously, we had to overcome that. So for me, our consumers become very, they wanted education. They went to education hubs, be it sort of media, be it retailers, to get that information which they were which they would have normally got in a bricks and mortar environment. And they started to really up their game. I mean, we saw people doing sort of procedures, treatments, which again, if you were to ask them a year ago, would they be willing to do something like that? They would have probably said no. But now, because of the education, the how-to videos, and all of that, it really, for me, it really accelerated it. So consumers become so much more engaged, so much more wanting, the thirst for information, really wanted it. And also, I think consumers were, in that time of isolation, lockdown, having a lot of time to reflect. So they were looking at themselves a lot more. And even trends that we saw, like a very minimalistic, pared down, much more sort of organic look, has started to prevail versus, I suppose, where we saw towards the end of last year, which was a lot more, 2019, which was a lot more heavy, lots of products, lots of beauty products. Whereas now consumers have had the time, consumers really engaged and sort of really educated themselves on what they use and how do they use and why they use it as well, actually.
I can add on maybe to that. I'm not sure how this works. Am I talking now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to add on to this, so it's interesting, right? Because you guys from Foreo, you came from the offline and moved into the online, and we were in the online to begin with, and we've heard it from a lot of people saying like, "Oh God, COVID must have been amazing for you," and in reality, it wasn't that direct of an impact, right? Because we're still a niche brand. In Italy, we're pretty known at this point, but in many countries, we're still not very known to the general public. So it's not like people who bought L'Oreal before in somewhere, or they went to Douglas, they just moved from the physical to the online shop of that brand or that channel. So we didn't have that super direct effect. We do have an indirect massive advantage, of course, of more and more people are really comfortable online just because they were forced to, and now they just realized how convenient it is and how much, thanks to the education that Ashley mentioned, how much you can actually do online, which you thought before you couldn't really buy online. And then there's a couple of temporary things we've seen, right? So and some we think will stay and some we think will probably change. So for instance, the beauty routine at home, we don't think that's going to go away, right? So I think that's just going to stay. The time people spend on socials, like from a personal perspective, I hope that's going to change, right? I hope we'll all spend a little less time on social and a little more time like socializing with our friends and people. And
We
then there's
get quite
other things
addicted.
Sorry?
We get quite addicted to social media.
We
probably in
are,
the last
aren't we?
months.
Yeah.
Terrible,
Yeah.
terrible. Yeah, and the last thing I think really, and then to the topic, I think that there is like, for instance, the care over color. So people really want to make, rather than putting on lots of makeup, they want to ensure that their skin is really healthy, so they clean it better and they use better products for it. We think that's just how to say, complementary, right? So for sure, color trends are going to change again. Maybe we'll see the MAC pink eyeshadow and green lips again soon. But in any case, that's complementary because you want the basis to be perfect and then as perfect as you can. And then you can just play with whatever we put on there from a fashion perspective.
Actually, if I can add something from our perspective, since we are a platform, so we put together all the brands in the same platform, and we go with them through our beauty box to get our customer base and to enable them to try and get in contact with the brand. I perfectly agree with all you guys said before. And basically, what happened to the world with this pandemic situation is that the persons changed a lot their habits, and they had more time to spend time on their person. They changed the way they eat, the way they choose products, the way they choose ingredients. For example, we all drastically decrease the times that we eat outside. So we take care of what we are eating at home. And the same is happening on the beauty space. So the people get really more conscious about the product they are choosing. In our platform, we saw really a rise of the organic products much more than before. It was already an important trend, but now it's quite the biggest part of the market in my opinion. And another important thing that we saw in our platform is the rise of the research in terms of ingredients, in terms of how to use, how to create treatments, and in this way we saw an important increase on our magazine, that we're really present to give the content to the customer, to be more conscious about their buying. And it's something that really increased a lot in the last months, and probably will be completely changing the way the customer will buy the products in the next months, next years. And in terms of local presence and brick and mortars, let's say, it's quite important to build a strategy with a omnichannel view. So if the customer is able to buy online and is willing to buy something online, probably is the loyal customer, and it will be buying the same products for the next months, years, whatever, with the same procedures. But if you have a physical presence, that gives you the possibility to complete the experience and to convince those customers that don't want to buy online.
I think we definitely saw, to your point, Mario, as well, we saw definitely this fusing of beauty and wellness together. Previously, wellness, people used to associate with spa treatments or sort of really that me time. Whereas now we saw, certainly with the pandemic, this whole beauty and wellness fusing together. So people were buying things to make them feel good. Like life was tough for a lot of people. So they were turning to beauty, they were turning to their beauty products to give them that boost, that thing that they needed, whether or not it was an eyeshadow or whether or not it was a cream or something like that. People really looked to this segment of beauty which we're in as that sort of that pick me up, and we definitely saw that here, and definitely people were sort of accelerating their spending on beauty because, again, they wanted that treat. They weren't seeing their friends, they weren't socializing, they wanted to feel good, and they were looking to brands and products which gives them not just a physical sort of appearance change, but also it gives them a mental change as well. There's something, even putting a bit of eyeshadow on, even for me as a guy, putting a bit of aftershave on, for example, even though I wasn't going anywhere, I still really enjoyed it because obviously it makes you feel good and also smell good as well. So definitely there were some very interesting shifts happening, I think, with our consumer. And I think some of these changes, to your point, Andrea, as well, are here to stay. Like, our consumers are much more confident, much more informed, and they will be taking this now into their lives. And I don't think we will be going back. I think consumers still want that physical connection. So again, there is also a role, and we'll come on to this in a minute, of bricks and mortar and what that looks like. But digital has really accelerated here, and it's certainly not going back, I see.
And in this frame, how is the role of media evolving?
Go on, Maria, you can start with that. Oh, really? Okay, Andrea.
So
maybe we should start. You
actually,
are a media company after all.
Well, we are kind of media company, so we are basically putting all our attention to acquire new customers and to acquire new customers for the brands that are collaborating with us. And actually, we had to change a lot of our strategies in the last year, and of course we had to change few times in different periods since the beginning of this pandemic situation. So we saw a ramp up at the beginning with the lockdown, with the traditional channels, and actually was really good for probably all the online brands that they were spending budget to acquire customers. But then, of course, the metrics changed, and I think for all the market, the cost a little bit changed per impression, cost per click, because then if the e-commerce is rising, the opportunity is going big, so all the small players are going into the arena and starting to spend money and to compete with all the other advertisers. It changed a bit also the cost in terms of traffic. So the rise of new media was quite impressive, important, and we saw the increasing importance of TikTok, for example, Pinterest, or also Twitch, that are now playing an important role for all the industries, but especially for us, because we are a content market that is really affected by what we want to communicate, what we want to show to our customers. And so we saw an important, let's say, change in terms of media mix. Also within the traditional channels, for example, Instagram and Facebook, we saw a differentiation and few changes in terms of formats that are performing better than others. The importance of the video, so all the how to use videos, all the how does it looks, the products, or how do you look with the product, it's super important. So for example, the reels in Instagram was quite not far. The launch was one important thing that we were looking on, and also like communities within YouTube for us was really important to focus on. So we saw, just to sum up, we saw a change in terms of media mix, and also a multiple change in terms of media cost. So differentiation for us was a solution. So testing and differentiate.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And we do still classic PR, right? And we are still super mega excited if we end up in the printed version of Vogue. So that credibility is still really important. A challenge with that is, so one of our advantages is we can bring a product to market from idea to first sale in like 2, max 3 months. And that's a massive advantage we have over the traditional players. On the other hand, 3 months is about the time it takes from press release to ending up in a magazine. So, and we can't really very well do a press release before we have a product. So the print for us is it works on kind of the classic products that we have all the time, and then they're there just constantly. But challenge on kind of a new product, and the print media, they always tell us like, yeah, give us your new product. It's like, yeah, great, but by the time you publish, we'll be out of season for our new product, right? So that's a bit of a challenge, but still, I mean, classic power is still really important for us. Then I think that the social media and in the reviews, in some countries more than others. In Germany is like in a market where reviews are like super, super, super over the top important. Other markets a bit less so. But all that grassroots people feedback gives a really nice social embedding. And so that enables new brands that we can't play on an existing brand, right? We're not one of the big players yet. But this enables us to get that credibility in another way, and so people can check out reviews and can check out what their friends say and check out what other people say about the product. And so I think that's a huge opportunity for new players.
I definitely agree, and I think from what we saw here in the UK, the media landscape massively changed. The rise of influencers were taking on established players like Condé Nast, for example, and the power now with these influencers versus they're seen as tier one. We classify some of these influencers into our tier one strategy cultivation. So just as important as some of our tier one titles will be some of our tier one influencers as well. So I think there has been certainly a balance between sort of influencers and established media and media houses. And I think I really will be honest with you. I think media houses were very slow out the blocks with the pandemic. They didn't really pivot that quickly to the new normal that we started to see. It took them a while for them to establish their, I suppose, social platforms, so IG Lives, and giving us opportunities to collaborate on platforms, like I said, on IG Lives with their real team. I think it took them, they were so sort of caught out of how do we react. I think, of course, they were creating content, but I think even things like virtual festivals, for example, which again was starting to become a really big thing, started to take off, but it wasn't for a number of months before we started to see those opportunities commercialized as well. And then, like I said, our influencer community just went through the roof in terms of their sort of costs as well. They were sort of creating content and it was going out, and they were actually, when you remove out of home, those real traditional formats that we used to sort of play with in terms of large scale campaigns, influencers were kind of at one stage the only guys who could give you that sort of visibility in the market, because like I said, out of home was down, cinema, obviously TV was still quite a big thing, but they become really quite important. And I think their attitude shifted as well, and they were being a lot more demanding, being a lot more, prices we saw slightly increased as well in their community as well. But also we saw some really strong authentic content creators coming through, and people really galvanized to those real sort of scientific content creators versus those traditional influencers as well. So I think the media now has fragmented even more than what it was previously as well. So yeah, some really interesting observations. And even platform, the shift from YouTube onto TikTok, massive migration we saw happen in a year. We saw a huge sort of the demographic shift of who was engaging with YouTube, who was engaging in TikTok happen. The demise of, we're starting to see, of IGTV and those formats sort of lowering, and also the algorithm. again, there's these here in the UK, there is just a plethora now of these peer-to-peer anti-algorithmic platforms, which are so organic in its nature, built on a user talking, recommending product, like this social selling community, which is the new, I suppose, for me, I see it as the new social media platforms, these new sort of really interesting social selling where you sort of really give, to your point, Andrea, this sort of review your personal experience, which is so authentic and it isn't governed by an algorithm dictating a view. It's not all sort of algorithmic based. It's based on a community of people just wanting to know the best skincare, for example. So yeah, some really interesting shifts we saw in the rise of these new sort of really underground platforms, which even as a brand, we're still trying to understand, okay, how do we sort of integrate ourselves into these platforms?
Yeah, and
I don't know
to
if you
conversely, I
guys,
think you said, oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
Who wants to add anything?
just one thing. I don't know if you guys saw also the rise of the user-generated content. So coming from the influencers and also from the review side, we saw really an increase of the content generated by the users itself. So they feel the first influencers, especially at the beginning of the lockdown. Did you see that or not?
Yes, absolutely. And I
Um,
think the comment that I
yeah,
was going to
absolutely.
make goes in the same direction. It's on the authenticity you addressed, Ashley. I think that is so important. Everybody by now has understood that there are influencers many influencers get paid. So we're kind of influencers used at the very beginning. There were just genuine people. It wasn't nearly like the user experience. And then it moved more into sort of an advertorial sort of space. But it's so important that that people are authentic and that we get sources that are authentic and real, and not just somebody who gets paid for talking about a product.
I completely agree, Andrea, and it's so interesting, again, even how we talk to our influencer community. Previously, we as a brand would put together a brief, put together sort of the requirements, what they have to say, when they have to say it, quite detailed sort of scripting, for example, of how we talk to these consumers, whereas now, or these content creators, whereas now it's a lot more sort of organic and we have to work with these people as opposed to we as a brand give you our messages and you have to disseminate it. It's like, these are our messages. You need to go away and create content around what that looks like for your channel because they're the expert. And that's where you get the really authentic content. And for most brands, it's hard because you are saying, okay, we're your brand, but we're trusting you to deliver our message on our behalf. But we're not going to tell you how to do it because once you try and script that piece of content, it just falls down because they're not, to your point, Andrea, they're not authentic. And I think that is, again, a huge shift that we've started to see. Certainly we saw where we have to now move away from these really quite detailed briefs into, okay, this is what we're trying to do, over to you to try and pull it together in your way for your community, really.
Yep.
Okay. And so, what role does digitalization play in the skincare routine? So, I heard you mention this digitalization. Do you want to all add something about it? Who can start?
So shall I start? For us, digitalization is in everything that we do at Foreo. So it was there, and it's certainly not going away. I mean, we integrate. We've got an app where we pair our devices to your app, and you can even do sort of like skincare analysis now. So digitalization is here. Consumers are really wanting that personalized experience now. They don't want to be treated as one group. Consumers want that real intimate relationship with a brand, and digital allows us to have that deep and meaningful connection to that consumer. And based on for example, how many times they use our products and what they use it for and why they use it. So consumers really want a very personalized experience, and even things like AR technology and all of that, it will become more and more relevant in society as consumers are starting to really feel comfortable about using this technology. And again, back to the whole, I suppose, the beginning of our sort of panel discussion about how pandemic has really catapulted those consumers. Consumers were still very uncomfortable about adding technology into beauty, but now it's sort of so comfortable. Consumers are so happy to engage with digital and bring that because they understand, okay, I'm going to get something very personal for me as opposed to something which previously they could only get if they saw a consultant, but now you can get it virtually as well.
Yeah, for us, the question of digitalization, we feel like we're somewhat post-digitalization, right? Because we were born out of digitalization. There was no Skinlabo before digitalization. There wouldn't be. And so for us, it's kind of the digitalization is the basis, is a given. What we are really working on is, or we were so focused on, is that benefit we have of having that direct contact to the consumer. How can we use that to give the consumer the best possible experience, really the products they need? No marketing, branding, fluff, right? We want to give the consumer what each individual person should get, the skincare that's the right for them and their needs and what they want to achieve. And so you addressed the consulting piece, Ashley, and I think, again, for us being in the digital world, we can't get people to just try our product like you would. You're in Douglas and Sephora, you take a bit of the product, try it on your skin, and then you try 7 other ones within 7 minutes. We can't do that. So the way we're overcoming it from a first approach is we want customers to try our products. That's why we make offers, like an offer we made to Powwow, even though we're losing money on something like this. We said, no, we want all the participants to try the product, right? And we can't send you to Sephora and say, give me a sample. So we give you a full product. And so you can really try it. And it's active ingredients. So some have an immediate effect, but some you need to use for a little while. So we give people a full product so they can really try it. And I think we're kind of thinking always on, digitalization, but how do we make sure that people stay connected? I can't think of a better word than despite digitalization, right? So we know digital is cold. So how can we bring the human touch back into that digitalization and use all the potential of digitalization, which is information, access, accessibility, reach, while at the same time making sure that people are connected. And sometimes, silly anecdote, but I feel like sometimes I hear like a beauty consultant, she'll be on the phone for like 25 minutes with a person. It's like, no beauty routine, however complex your skin is, needs 25 minutes. But it's sometimes I feel like, people, the way people sometimes go to their doctors, or because we used to have, in the last year, we had so much less social contacts with other people. It's like, I have a real person on the phone, and the person's interested in how I'm doing, what I need. So I'll spend 20 minutes with them. And for us, that's totally okay, right? That's what we want, because if we can make a customer so happy with that, she's going to speak about it with all her friends and all the family, and that's fine.
I think the consumer's needs didn't go away during the pandemic, and we certainly saw that as well. Just because we're in lockdown, consumers still were worried about their acne. They were still worried about what SPF do they need to be using. So consumers were looking for other ways to do it. And I think, to your point, Andrea, certain brands did it really well. So they were still able to engage with the consumer. They didn't just pull the shutters down. They said, okay, because people can't go to the store, we can't talk to you. We have to still continue that dialogue with that consumer. So we need to we need to go where the consumers are. So we created virtual consultations, and even sort of Mac was doing virtual lipsticks on their website as well. So you could try on and upload a photo and see what different shades look like on you. And I think all of those things were bridging that gap with the consumer. So they were still engaged with the brand. And I think brands that were, or organizations even in retailers, brands that weren't quick to pivot to this digital arena just for fun, just sort of, I saw some brands just literally stop, and they didn't understand it, and they didn't understand necessarily what was happening. They just literally stopped operation, and I think that was a really missed opportunity for them, because they stopped that conversation with that consumer, and the consumer then went to other places to see, and perhaps now they will become loyal, and they might not revert back to that other brand, or they might not revert back to what their previous habits were.
Anyone who wants to add something?
Actually, I completely agree with you, Andrea. I mean, we are existing thanks to the digitalization. So for us, it's something that is the basis, and we are leveraging on this in all the points of our strategy. So how we're gonna build the next projects, leveraging on the data we collected in these years, how we do provide information to our customers, how we are working on the personalization through digitalization. So it's all about this for us and our strategy, because we are a digital company. So that's it.
Sure.
And how can you improve the online experience? Because for fashion, we have many platforms to see, for example, a 3D model or something like that. What can you do to improve, to enhance the online experience, the online shopping experience? Art.
I think for us definitely at Foreo, there's so much data available, and we ask, and consumers will share data, but it's what do they see in return for sharing that data? And for us, it's being really transparent about A, how we use that data so they understand it, and B, how can they, if they give us more data in terms of what they sort of their skin type, etc., skin concerns, how do we then use it to match with our products? And I think that understanding, because consumers are certainly the younger, more sort of switched on consumers are definitely more wary of sharing data with organizations now, but they really want to understand, okay, if I share this data, I'm quite willing to share this data with you, but what are you going to give me in return? So if I'm giving you all of this data, what can I give? And I think if we have to make a commitment to that consumer to say, okay, you give us this data, we will create a really personal experience with you, which is founded on your exact needs. And I think that's so powerful for a brand to be able to have almost like an individual conversation with that consumer, but because they've given all of that data so that they can become very informed, very sort of, it's a very deep and meaningful connection that brand is having, which is so powerful, which you would never be able to get in any other type of arena, really.
In our opinion, actually, it's super important that the product, so the website, the funnel, and to improve that for every single customer. So we are constantly looking on what the customer are doing, which are their problems. We are also connected with the customers with different tools, for example, chatting, or also by phone when they have problems. We search to solve the problem with the customer. And for us, I mean, every single percentage of conversion rate that we are able to optimize has a great return on the final result on the business side. So in the funnel perspective, with the UX, with the UI. We are really committed to improve the experience of the customer every single day. And we are a tech company, we're a digital company. So we are developing all the things internally. And this is our added value compared to other players in the industry. And the second point is what you said before, Ashley. We are searching to collect more data about our customers. We have a lot of data because with our beauty boxes, actually, we have a different experience that is changing every month, and we collect data every month, searching to measure what the customer is thinking about the experience they lived in the last month, and how this experience is changing in the months, in month by month, and we are starting from there to increase the value of our products and the value of our new projects, developing something really strict with the community. So in Abiby, we have a strong community, and we have also small communities inside the biggest one. So they know what we're doing, and they know that they're developing something with us. And for us, this is super important because we see this commitment and in a customer perspective. I mean, we're a club, we're a big family, and we want to offer the best experience for them because they trust on us, and we want to maximize the retention and collaboration with them.
Yeah, I think you said nearly everything that needs to be said around that topic, right? So we're super mindful of how we're using our customers' data, make sure that it's really protected. I mean, we do have a database of nearly 700,000 people now, and we have their home address and their phone number and their email address. So we know that this is something we need to protect. So we're really, really serious about that. And when it comes to consumer behavior, I think, again, it's like the internet, right? Is the internet good or bad? It's the same with the access that companies have now to data. So we really look to, we understand very well how the consumer is behaving. We see exactly which ad they're clicking and which ad they're not clicking on. We see where on the website they go and where they don't go and where they stop and where they abandon. So we have all this information. But on one hand, we obviously make sure that the way this is used is really anonymous and not about the single person, but we're looking for how to say, let's call it trends, for lack of a better term. And but we really use all that information that we have to enhance the customer's experience and the customer journey. That's really all we care about. We care about understanding what they need, and this is both the online bit, let's say, but it's also of speaking with them on the phone every day. I mentioned before, we have our beauty consultants have 2,000 customer contacts every day between phone, message, email. So that's an amazing source of information. Of course, we couldn't be an innovative company if all we did was listen to our existing customers, but still our existing customers give us amazing insights and kind of what they need, and that's what we try to do. We try to develop products that work for them and that exactly fit the need, exactly what they need and when they need it, or rather 2 months after.
Okay. And new medias means new generations. So how do you engage new generations? Who wants to start?
Actually, the new generations are the easiest
here and now.
generation to convince to buy something online. So they grew up with technology, with e-commerce. So it's an important opportunity for the market. And of course, communication have to be really different compared to other group pages, and the channels are quite different, but not that much, because at the beginning TikTok and Twitch were quite populated by the youngest part, and now also the say the oldest groups
The Z
are
generation.
joining the platforms, of course. So it's just about the communication and how you deliver the messages and how you differentiate the messages between those age groups.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Mario. And I think we've got to go to where our consumers are. And our consumers are, like I said previously, they were on Instagram, they were on YouTube, but now they're on Parler, they're on Discord, they're on such organic, like I said, underground sort of social networking sites, which aren't governed by an algorithm, which aren't governed by big business. So for us, it's how do we engage with those content creators and still try and manage a message and a community. And back to the point about content and making it sort of how we communicate to those content creators in a very different way with a very different product, with a very different message. I mean, now look at TikTok, 30 seconds. Like this is, for us here in the UK, we're at content saturation. It's content's everywhere. Like you can go on and you can see the most amazing content on your social feed. So for us, our content has to be different. We have to use different creators, and we have to leverage people in different specialities as well. I mean, we're seeing a huge rise of, like I said, these genuine influencers who are versed in science and who have PhD degrees who demyth beauty. So, for example, they know sort of they can talk to their audiences about sort of very, very technical beauty products, and they sort of really debunk it. So again, we have to have strong clinical trials to talk to that community as well. So we have to be very rounded to the platforms we're talking to and the content creators, whereas previously we can push a message and it will go to all of the different platforms. Now we have to really micromanage our different messages for communities, content creators, platforms, etc.
Yeah. So for us, actually, well, at first it got a bit easier, right? Because we started with most of our products were anti-aging. And so I want to say a year and a half ago, 80% of our customers were between 35 and 65. And so, yeah, the 35-ish ones, maybe more so, but the 61, like before COVID, they were not as much online as they are now, or no, certainly not like the people in their 20s. And so, for us, it got easier because we then expanded our product range, and we now have also products for really young people, right? So sensitive skin, acne, oily skin, whatever it is, right? So we have a way more broader offering now. But the challenge is we just all have to, this is moving so fast and it's changing so fast that we just have to think on our feet and be really quick all the time. And that with really making sure we use our resources in a really effective way. Because again, we're not Estee Lauder companies, and we're not Unilever, and we're not LOreal, who can just throw 100 million at a marketing budget and then get it wrong, right? We really have to be careful on where we're putting our capital, keep trying stuff, A/B testing constantly. I mean, we A/B testing like sometimes hundreds of graphics every day. So it's really important to think on your feet and never stop, right? Never think like, it's like I said, it's like with my children. I have children, they're 3 and 1. Like as soon as something works, like you found a routine, you found the food they like, you found whatever, you can be sure that days to weeks after it's not going to work anymore. It's the same with the market, right? It's changing so fast, so you just have to keep up and stay ahead of it.
Totally agree. It's such a fast-paced environment, and like I said, there's new platforms just coming all the time now, and brands are we're having to pivot all the time. So we move different platforms, we move different creators. So it's certainly a very interesting space, and I really enjoy it. Like having worked at Estee Lauder and having worked at MAC, you're so far removed from it. You can't see trends. You can't see because you're not that close to it. Whereas here, certainly in my role now, I'm so close to it. I can see trends even before sort of things are happening in the market. So then you suddenly quickly pivot. Again, I think certainly big organizations find that so challenging to be that reactive and that agile.
Okay. Posso parlare? Oh, okay. So I have one last question for you, okay? And the
Sure.
question is, what is the future of brick and mortar? So the hardest question at the end.
Yeah,
Who wants to
I
start?
wish we knew.
Yeah,
I will go
can we use
last
that
this
as a?
time.
Women first.
I think you wish we knew we
Go on,
is
Andrea.
something of what it says. No, in all seriousness, I mean, there's many people who believe omnichannel is the way to go. We haven't figured it out yet for us. We do think, again, it's the same. People are going to go back to being more physical in spaces, but this is a way bigger evolution. I mean, the decline, the demise of the city centers in the US, it's already the past, right? There's no more city centers. In Europe, it's evolving in all sorts of directions. Everything went to the mall, and now nobody wants to go to the mall anymore. So I think that is such a massive society question matter. It's political. It's about how people live. It's about real estate. It's so massive that, I think I can only say how we look at it. So I guess the answer is we don't know yet. We haven't decided yet. We know that going offline in a massive way, I mean, there's always pop-ups, right? And you can do pop-up and you can try it. And it's a great way to connect with the customer on a different level. And you get you could amplify it then virtually and get loads of great material. And some brands do this really well. I mean, the Instagrammable shop that's not there to sell a single product really, or it's all about people taking really cool pictures and posting them on their feeds. But I guess we know that to go offline, we would need massive amounts of capital, and we have yet to see whether we think it's worth it. So I guess the answer is we don't know yet.
From our side, and yeah, exactly to your point, Andrea, as well, I think we definitely have seen a massive shift here from those huge flagship stores that we see in London, for example, the Harrods, the Selfridges, where they were huge meccas for consumers to go to and to experience a very different sort of retail experience. And we've seen a lot of regional stores open a lot, and consumers are now, instead of going into the city centre, they're shopping regionally closer to home. They've rediscovered their local area a lot more because the pandemic has made them do that. So they've now become very comfortable, and unless retail has a very distinct reason to visit. So, for example, unless Oxford Street is doing a massive art exhibition, no one will want to go. So, I think what retailers need to do is really differentiate and create these real strong reasons to visit those destinations. Because why would I go to London? I live just on the outskirts of London, but why would I travel into the city centre if I can get exactly what I want from a local store? So for me, it has to have a very distinct cultural sort of moment or something to really drive me into those places where I can do many different things. So again, see art, have dinner, have an experience. So I think omnichannel is always here. Like, people love that interaction with the salesperson, and they always will want to go. But I think the locations are changing. Like I said, the rise of regional versus flagship is massive, and I think those brands, it's been such an interesting conversations. Whereas again, flagship, huge sort of powerhouses like Harrods and Selfridges really lost ground in the pandemic. Like, they weren't open, their online presence was pretty small. They were once seen as the the epitome of retail, but now the likes of Look Fantastic and Cult Beauty, those guys have really accelerated, and they've taken what was some of their market share. So, and I don't think consumers will pivot back, because again, they've shared all of this data with Look Fantastic or whoever, and they're getting offers, they're getting incentives, they're getting they know exactly what's their triggers. So they're being enticed back. And I think that is, again, a really powerful thing. So for me, yes, like I said, retail will always exist, bricks and mortar will always exist, but it needs to really, I think, now redefine what it does and the role it has within society.
Yeah, and I think to add on to what you just said, Ashley, is like before, brick and mortar had the advantage of adding the service aspect, but then lots of shops started to what's the word, to neglect that, and at the same time, digital offers started to improve their service, right? So now, like, we think we have a way better customer service than Douglas does, right? Because our people are more informed, and they only sell one brand, which is also helpful, right? So they can have way deeper knowledge of that one brand than any shop assistant could have, who needs to sell 100 brands. And so the service is no longer enough. It all has to be about the experience, as you said, right? It needs to be, I go into town, I do a bit of shopping, but I go to the theater. And even within the shop, I think it's not enough to say I'm close to a theater. The shop itself needs to become an experience.
Has to be a theatre.
And not be just about selling a product.
Totally agree.
Okay.
Actually, I totally agree. So nothing to add from my side.
Okay, so if any of you has something to say.
No, I think we should be speaking far too long.
Yes, and
can
thank
go
you for
ahead
letting us go
tomorrow.
over time here.
Yeah, it has
We
been
could go on for ages.
absolutely interesting, really. So I would like to thank you again for accepting our invitation.
No worries, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you, and see you soon.
Great,
Thanks for
thank
having
you.
us.
Have a good day. Thank
So
you.
see you
Bye-bye.
guys in the
Bye.
next box.
Thank you.
Bye bye.